Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis Cox with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here with your new moon forecast. So our new moon is this Friday, October 16th, and it's going to be 9:31 a.m. in Hawaii time. So Pacific time, that'll be 12:31 p.m. So noon is going to be the exact time the sun and moon come together in sidereal Virgo. So if you remember last month, we had them coming together at the very beginning of Virgo, in like the 0 degrees of Uttara Falguni. This time it's at the very end of Virgo, so we're at 29 degrees 44 seconds in Chitra, the nakshatra of Vishwakarma. Vishwakarma is the divine architect. This is where we can take all those details, all that, sort of facts and figures and categorization and all of that we do in Virgo, where we're really trying to organize everything, and we can make it mean something. We can put it together to actually convey something within ourselves that we want to make in the world, that we want to erect. This is architecture, so it can be actual buildings, it can be actual structures, or it can be more like metaphysical structures and systems that we want. It's moving into Libra, so Chitra is a star that flanks both Virgo and Libra, and it's half and half. So once it moves into Libra, it really becomes a lot about interpersonal relationships. So we want systems that function beautifully, harmoniously, that help people, bring people together. So if you're, doing some kind of design on your home, or you're trying to redesign where you live, this is the time to really bring that vision into fruition and make it work. So it's useful, it's functional, and it's also really beautiful. And while we're still in the Virgo part, we're more in the function, usefulness, practicality stages of it. Once we get into the Libra part, we really get into the beautification and making sure that it works for everybody. And so this is that time. This is that moment in Virgo where we really start to move out of the self-effacing quality that Virgo often has, which is this kind of nitpicky, fault-finding aspect of ourselves, and we move into the part that's like, okay, all those details mean something, and we can make something come out of that. We can move out of that space of just being stuck in the details, and we can bring it out into the world. So this particular new moon also has drishti directly across the way from Mars retrograde, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, and I'm sure you've heard about it from other astrologers as well. Mars has been retrograde since the beginning of September, and is now back in Pisces, back in sidereal Pisces. For many people, this Mars retrograde has been super challenging. It can bring you stomach issues. It can bring unsurfacing anger, so anger that's just beneath the surface, where you're kind of frustrated and unable to bring it out. Action that is frustrated, which helps feed the anger, because you feel like, there's all these things I should be doing, but it's like the action's delayed and everything's kind of building up beneath the surface. So Mars retrograde has already been a challenge for people. It's not, it's not just this moment, but now that it's shining drishti, a gaze directly across from the new moon, we're going to see this exchange of energy. So the sun and moon in Virgo are exchanging with Mars in Pisces, and it's within, 3 degrees of each other. So very close. And what that's going to do is bring some of the anger of all that fault finding, all those little things that you've been categorizing and collecting in your head, starting to come up to the surface, like, this doesn't work for me, this doesn't work for me, and this kind of fault finding quality that we have in Virgo turning into an angry fault finding quality. And then as well, we turn that on ourselves. Like, we're mad at ourselves for not having enough discipline, we're mad at ourselves for not, really clearing all the blocks and things that are in our way. We get angry with ourselves, and so we take it out on other people often. What Mars is really calling us to do is to turn that gaze inward, and not in a way where we're, harshly disciplining ourselves, not in a way where we're being, mad at ourselves, but where we are able to become courageous enough and have that level of discipline to do the inner work. And that's really what we need to do. While it's in Pisces, it's a very spiritual sign. It's a water sign. It has a lot to do with the emotions. It has a lot to do with our connection to spirit and our capacity to set boundaries that's so, and I don't mean boundaries necessarily with other people, but like lines around things. Virgo is where we're categorizing and calling something something, naming it, and making the lines around it to say this is this. Pisces is where we're sort of erasing all those lines, and we're like, oh, it's all one, it's all part of the same thing. Is this discipline is really this discipline, and it's all kind of merging together. So it's where we can get really lost in the sea of oneness, and we have trouble with that definition. So these two giving drishti across the way from each other are bringing that up, that frustration from the lack of lines, the lack of delineation on the moon that's still hyper aligned and hyper focused on categorization and order and creating some kind of clean slate that we really want. What we really want in Virgo is to purify. We want a clean slate. We want everything to be like new, the way it used to be, fresh and healthy. So perhaps you've been, focusing on cleansing your body, using natural medicines or doing cleanses or fasts. That's a beautiful way to appeal to the Virgo part of you, but then maybe it's been hard and there's some trouble with the discipline end of it because because Mars retrograde again is kind of fuzzy on the discipline. It's a little bit delayed, and maybe you won't back over old ground, old things that you don't feel like you want to deal with anymore. All of this can come up for you right now, and it's a time to heal and purge it. The other planet that just went retrograde is Mercury, which is the ruler of Virgo. So Mercury is sort of the famous retrograde. Whenever Mercury is retrograde, everyone's like, Mercury retrograde. And normally I really sort of try to move away from that mentality. I think Mercury retrograde can be very frustrating in this world that we live in because we do use email and computers and phones and all these kind of things. It's such a big part of our way of dealing with life here that communication can be a really, really challenging for us, that delay in communication. But I think in terms of interpersonal relationships, and I think in terms of our own process of taking in information, it's really valuable to have this retrograde period because it gives us a chance to listen instead of just talking. It gives us a chance to sort of run over the information that we've been given and maybe reassess it. It gives us a real opportunity to go back and slow down and not just outpour information all the time, which especially on the heels of that Rahu and Gemini axis that we were just in, I think this can be really helpful for us, really healing for us to go over that old information. Of course, here in the US, we're leading up to an election, and most of us are doing mail-in ballots. So it can cause problems with that, delay in mail, delay in, the getting your vote, your communication in, all of that kind of stuff can become problematic. So in that sense, it's not the best timing for that. The other thing is that it's in the sign of Libra. Generally speaking, Mercury in Libra is such a great placement because it really offers us the kindness and the desire to connect with the other person. We want to bring harmony. We want to get along. We want to make the conversation functional and have everybody's needs met. But in retrograde situation, what we're doing is we're sort of delayed on that. So first of all, just like that email might get lost, well, that text message might get lost. The lines of communication get crossed and people are like, oh, you didn't respond, or they didn't get your response, or the way you responded sounded different to them than what they thought. So it can bring up relational issues in that way, that there's just miscommunication, delays in communication, and confusion. But it also brings up old patterns, right? Old things, old subjects, old topics, old things we've had to talk about before. Now we have to talk about them again, which is frustrating. Whenever a planet is retrograde, we get frustrated with that energy. And in the sign of Libra, it's going to focus a lot along the lines of relationships. And that just went retrograde on the 14th. So we are this new moon's on the 16th. I'm filming this on the 15th, so I'm right in between these two periods, but that is definitely going to affect this new moon, especially because it's the ruler of it. We're going to see even more delay in our plans. So as you are sort of erecting your vision of what you want to build and what you want to make, also hold space for delays, hold space for the fact that things are going to fall behind. I just moved back to the big island of Hawaii, and everything has been delayed. The whole process has been one big delay. There's been from the place I'm supposed to go to my packages, to my, to my communication, my mail, my internet, my phone service, all of it has been on this sort of retrograde plane. And I'm just very accepting of that because I know that's where things are at, because I do have access to the information about the stars. I can accept that and be like, this is just where it's at right now. It's delayed and there's nothing I can do. And I knew that when I was planning my move, that I was moving at a time with all these, with these two planets retrograde. So what can we do about it? What can we do when that frustration comes up? Well, it's not just a time to listen to others, although it really can be valuable for that, especially in relationships, to really listen to what other people are saying and what their needs are and what isn't, what is they're expressing to you is not being met, or, that they need. But it's also a time to listen to ourselves, right? It's a time to really like dial into what our mind chatter is and what we tend to default to in our communication. Maybe the niceties and the things that we do that are just polite, this sort of, how are you? I'm fine. Oh, good. And like keep things on the surface, which sometimes happens with Mercury and Libra because we so much want things to be harmonious. We won't necessarily go beneath the surface. Well, this is a time when we might have to go a little bit beneath the surface and be like, am I fine? Or this person isn't really expressing that they're fine, and how can we go deeper than that? It's also a time to really focus on what your connection to your, to your healing processes, to what it is you want to manifest in this world. There's obstacles. There's always things that are kind of blocking the way. And they're internal, right? There's going to be external obstacles. Like I just said, there's going to be, there's going to be delays. There's going to be flight problems. I mean, I have to quarantine for 2 weeks here in Hawaii. So I'm sort of stuck in this space. I'm like in this place. I can't even go to the ocean or anything. I'm limited in my mobility. Those are external things that I can't do anything about. But the internal obstacles are really what keep us from doing what we really need to be doing. That's more often than not, that's the struggle, because any external obstacle, you can find a way to change your course or work around or go under or go over or go through, however you need to deal with it. But internal obstacles often present blocks that we have trouble seeing. And now is a really potent time for us to use other people as a mirror for that, for what, instead of just like, oh, you do this, like, how do I do that? Or what do I do that's in that same vein? It's also a time to really dive deep into your connection to your practices and what you do to connect yourself to spirit. And if it's shallow, or if it's too many varied things, like all these different approaches, but you're not really getting anywhere, it's a good time to dial that in and really see how you might scatter your information or just stay in the land of information and parts, and not bringing it together into something more and something bigger and something meaningful that can actually make a difference in your life and the life of those around you. The new moon that we're in right now is also really special in India because it's the start of Durga Navaratri. And Navaratri is the 9 nights, so it's the 9 nights of the Divine Mother. It's a really blessed ceremony where we are able to, first of all, sort of give thanks and gratitude at this fall time, at this harvest time, for everything that we've been able to sow and what we are reaping in this moment, which is mostly what we sowed. It's also a time to really look at the shadowy parts of ourselves, to look at the demons within ourselves. In the story, in the epic tale, Durga is this demon slayer, and she transforms herself into her different aspects and is able to combat all this army of demons, just like myriads of demons coming at her. But then also, like, the biggest demon, Mahiyasura, is the shape-shifting demon. He's the buffalo-headed demon, but he's the one who can change who he is. And that's really what a lot of our inner demons are like. We can't always get our finger on them. We like, oh, that's our problem. We might name our problem, but then it comes out in some other way when we try to take care of it. Like if you are taking advantage of this Virgo this second new moon in Virgo, so we had one already, maybe you have done a cleanse or some kind of healthy you know, it's been a time to take on your health, for example. And then you're like, but it's like I cut out gluten and it's still not fixing my problem. Or like I cut out, you know, sweets or whatever your thing is, and I still don't feel like I'm better, and my stomach is still hurting, and all of this kind of stuff, which we talked about with Mars retrograde, can be coming up. You're not getting the results you want from whatever it is you're trying to do, whatever your attempt was that you were trying to, you know, cleanse yourself and purify yourself. There's this quality of like, it's still there. It's because there's a shape-shifting quality. It's not as simple as just cutting out sugar or cutting out gluten. You have to do more and go deeper if you're going to make real change and really purify yourself and really clean the slate for you to build what you want to build and erect what you want to erect in this next cycle. A good example of a Mars retrograde moment of the loud noise of somebody doing something that they need to do in a moment when I'm doing what I need to do. But also, I want to talk more about Durga Navaratri, but I remembered something else that I didn't mention yet, which is that Venus is in Leo right now. And Venus is the ruler of Mercury retrograde in Libra. And this is where we have a tendency to be very much like all about ourselves. Like our happiness is centered around ourselves, and everyone else should be feeling that same way. When it's a transit, when it's somebody's natal chart, when it's something that's in their Rasi chart, we can see that they might have that quality about them, and they might, you know, just naturally think everybody should be focused on them and they should be up on a pedestal. It can also be a place where we're very affectionate and magnanimous and giving, but it's also where we're really, you know, it's really a self-centric placement. When everyone has that transit, as right now, we all feel that way. We're all like, our needs are supposed to be the ones that are most important right now, and we should be up on, you know, we should be the one that everyone's circling around and making their choices, like we're the sun. And in all of our relationships, not just our romantic relationships, but our interpersonal relationships in general. So that's something to be aware of. And we do have a Jupiter drishti on that Venus. So Jupiter in his own sign of Sagittarius is putting drishti on that Venus, giving us a chance to really reflect on that and maybe use some of our tools or use some of our wisdom and knowledge to say, oh yeah, there are other people, and you know, maybe the world doesn't revolve around me, and these people's needs also need to be met in order for mine to be met. So it's a lot about trying to figure out compromise, but that does add to the problem I was discussing earlier with Mercury retrograde in Libra. It's like an added problem. Like not only is communication kind of delayed, but then on top of that, we also have this, you know, sort of prima donna energy with our Venus. And then Mars under the surface, retrograde and angry, you know, underneath the surface, like, oh, how come this person never pays, you know, never takes account of my needs or isn't more considerate of the fact that they would do something. I don't know. This is kind of going back in a retrograde fashion to what I was talking about before, but it came up, and so I thought I would bring that up. But back to Durga Navaratri. It's a time when we can really like release the things that aren't working for us. If you think about fall season, which doesn't necessarily exist here, but there's, you know, leaves falling, there's change in the air, everything's starting to die. And that death, that like release of stuff is necessary if we're going to have a clean slate to build something new on, right? We understand that from the concept of the seasons. We understand it if you're in the Vedic world, which you are probably at least a little bit if you're here with me now, from the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva trinity, where it's like Shiva is that which destroys, that which like lays waste to, so that it can be recycled and be reborn into whatever Brahma creates. And Vishnu's the one that maintains what's created for however long it's maintained until Shiva destroys it. So we have this same quality of this trinity in Durga Navaratri. And it depends on what part of India or Nepal that you're in as to how they celebrate this festival. Some parts celebrate the beginning part, the new part, the Saraswati part first, and some at the end. Lakshmi's always in the middle, and she is the counterpart of Vishnu, this one that's maintaining and sustaining and nurturing life and that which is. And then there's the Kali energy that breaks down and destroys and really, you know, lays out anything that's left that needs to be eradicated. And so that can either be at the beginning or at the end, depending on where you're celebrating and what your, you know, what your relationship with that is. But whether you lay waste first and then move into that newer energy, or whether you go the other direction, there's that quality of needing all three parts. You need the creativity of Saraswati, the quality of music and art and the written word and the spoken word, and this part where we're bringing together magic from nothingness, you know, from nothing but sound. And then there's the quality of Lakshmi, which is like, again, loving and nurturing and abundant and really fertile. And then there's the quality of Kali, and it can be Kali Durga. You know, Durga is also the demon slayer, and it's a fierce protective energy. Kali is when she turns into an even fiercer energy and is really no longer concerned with the external niceties at all. And in the story, the part where she turns into Kali is when the demon has just propagated himself too many times. He has a special boon and he's able to just reproduce and reproduce and reproduce. Every time a drop of his blood falls, another demon comes. And at this point, Kali comes out of Durga, and she is this, you know, kind of old and withered expression with matted hair. It's wild, none of the customs, none of the beauty, none of the, you know, cleanliness or tradition being honored. She's naked, but for like a, you know, necklace of skulls and a skirt of arms, and she's got her centaur, her like rounded sword to cut off the heads of the demons, and then she has this long red tongue that she like lulls out and licks up the blood as soon as it falls so that a new demon can't be born. And this is how she lays waste to all the demons and really just ends up conquering them, so that she gets in such a frenzy, such a, you know, bloodthirsty frenzy of just like, like annihilation is everything, you know, and it has to be brought back to her center by Shiva, by her counterpart. So that is something to also be aware of in us. Like we need to, you know, shed old things. We need to shed old patterns. We need to cut things down. We even need to sometimes do it in a somewhat violent way, but we need to always come back to center too, because we can get sort of too hyped up on the violence, too hyped up on laying waste, too hyped up on licking up the blood and lopping off the heads of the demons, and it becomes a bit of a frenzy where we're more addicted to that than we are to just that clearing process. So being aware of ourselves in each of those steps is so profound and important, and it can be such a healing ceremony if you really go in deep during these 10 days and allow yourself to lay the groundwork for what you're going to build. So I hope that this is helpful to you and that you have a really blessed Navaratri. If you are interested in doing like a puja form of it, I have on my written article a link to a beautiful woman, yogini named Laura Amazone, who does a online Durga puja, and it's really, really beautiful. There's so much that you can tap into if you really want to get into the traditional and the sacred knowledge of Durga. She also has a book called Goddess Durga and the Sacred Female Power, but there's, you know, you can really dive deep from many different perspectives and translations if you're interested in that. But if you're not necessarily, you know, wanting to take that path, but you just want to tap into this energy, it can be a time to just every night maybe light a candle, or, you know, make a beautiful sound with some healing instrument, do some meditation, some prayer, and maybe write down, you know, if you're choosing to do those first 3 days as more Kali energy, maybe write down the things that you really need to burn, or you really need to lay waste to. And throughout the process, gather that, you know, maybe then in the next part, the abundance you want to bring in and what you want to create and hold, and then maybe what you really want to make in the world. each of those parts you can honor in a way, even just writing them down or drawing a picture, whatever feels good to you. And then on the 10th day, the victory day, you can do a celebration. They will take Durga statues and put them in the river and stuff like that. So you could do whatever version of that is available to you. You know, maybe just getting them wet, or if you're at the Kali stage at the end, then maybe burning everything. Whatever is a sacred ritual that you can really tap into is a way to really put out the energy of what it is you want to do. Because one of the qualities of the Goddess Mother that's so profound is this quality that she wants to be called upon. The goddess is said to be in the sound, in the Bij syllables. And the sound, you know, brings her body out. So in calling to her, if you have a mantra practice, calling out to the goddess and asking for help is really what brings her to you to help you. So this can be something that, you know, you need to physically do something to call out. You can't just sort of want it in some other space. So that's a really powerful tool right now. And it can also help you with that sort of Mercury retrograde. Maybe the cat has your tongue quality. You can take your time with something that's written, or with, you know, with a piece of art or something like that, and really reflect on what it is you're tired of. What patterns and habits have you been holding on to for so long that you're really ready to shed? And also, what are you ready to really bring into your world and manifest? And take the focus off the other people. Take the focus off what they should be doing different, and move into yourself in your own heart space. So many blessings. If you aren't already on my email list, please sign up. There's a free report, Rahu in Taurus, Ketu in Scorpio, the nodal axis we're in right now, for all 12 signs for each of the rising signs. So you can really see how this year and a half is, you know, generating your karma, where your focus is and where you're sort of pulling away from. And also you get these free reports direct to your inbox every 2 weeks. So blessed Navaratri, Jai Ma, and happy new moon.